Thank you so much for listening to this edition of Alumless Takes. Every other week, we have a shortened version of the Alumless broadcast. We get a chance to interview lots of practitioners out there doing great work. And I am joined today by Pat Fligge. Pat is the Director of Alumni Career Engagement at Temple University. Pat, when I was thinking about wanting to do a Alumless Takes episode on alumni career services, you were the first person that comes to mind. We had a chance to meet and connect. It was probably 6 or 7 years ago when we did a joint consulting project. And ever since then, I've admired your work and know you think tirelessly around these issues of career engagement. So great to have you.
Thanks, Ryan. Really appreciate the invitation and the kind words. Excited to talk about one of my favorite professional subjects.
Well, so I wanted to, us get us started by asking you about the hot topics that exist today in the world of alumni career services. You are someone who's been deeply involved in ACSN, which is the Alumni Career Services Network Association. Tell me a little bit about the hot topics that are, ongoing at the association when you're in those groups of practitioners. And has that conversation shifted over the last year or so?
Number one is AI, and I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that phenomenon specifically, so I'll save more comments from there, but I'd say that we're all talking a lot about that and how it's affecting our work and changing a lot about the operations of an alumni career services or engagement team. I think the other hot topic right now is that it's a really challenging job market for early career talent, for mid-career talent. There's a lot of job seekers. There aren't as many job openings as there were even a couple of years ago. And so a lot of us are thinking about, all right, how does that change what our service mix looks like? How does that help us sort of ask for more resources or find ways to deliver more programming or events to our constituents? Because we recognize how difficult the job market is and the unique place that your alma mater can play in helping people find connections, build relationships to cut through all of the many job applicants that are out there. But can that Temple University on your resume cut through the noise of all those other applicants? So I think a lot of it is thinking like, how do we adapt to this really challenging job market that we're in this moment and deliver some unique value to our alums?
And I guess, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is specifically that, right? The idea of the challenging job market. And it's fair to say that those two things that you mentioned, sort of the AI and the job market, are kind of part of the same conversation as it exists, like the jobs that are going away, right? As a result of AI companies laying off thousands of people, right? As they try to think through what can be automated, what AI can do. And I really think it impacts college students and recent graduates perhaps more than any other group, right? Just because it feels like so many of the things that we used to think about as like internships or entry-level roles are the types of roles that are going to be filled by AI. And I guess I wanted to ask your opinion on how you think AI will disrupt career coaching, because when I think about it, one of the roles that, when I led a career services unit in our career coaching staff is they did a lot of the providing of advice, right? On resumes and LinkedIn profiles, mock interviews, right? How to get jobs and internships. And I imagine that as we move further ahead, that alumni, students, most people will begin to trust the feedback from the robots, right? Even more when they might have traditionally turned to career coaches, real people, right, for that same type of advice. I guess, how are you all thinking about this dynamic, and are we embracing it? Like, how should we evolve in this area if you were to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to embrace it, right? Like it's not just something that's going to be here for a little bit and go away. That this is a new tool that's going to be with us forever now. And so I think the way I try to think about it is how can this augment the process and replace maybe some parts of that career coaching mix? And I think a lot of that is on us as practitioners to educate ourselves of the best way to use these tools, and then to educate our clients too, whether they are students or young alums or established alums, of, hey, okay, this is a use case for an AI tool, right? Like I think about, we have JobScan at Temple University, which is a resume analysis tool. I think that's a really great thing for an AI brain to help with, right? Like I like to write. I think I've got good reading comprehension skills, but it can really tire out your brain to analyze every one of your job applications, your resume to make sure it matches that job description. I think that's a wonderful place for an AI tool to help augment the process, right? Or if you're updating language on your resume or your LinkedIn and you're like, all right, how can I say this in a different way? Having that back and forth with that virtual assistant can really help you add to the process. I think where it gets risky is, all right, how much are you outsourcing to an AI, right? How much are you letting that impersonate your efforts or your abilities? That's where we have to be really careful and really thoughtful. Like, how does this help me get the best version of my skill set out, or help me find the clarity that I'm seeking? So I think in the way we incorporate it into our conversations or our programming is, how do we use this to help add as one more voice or one more source in the conversation? I do think there's still place for a human who has the context of how these tools are coming into the job search process, but what a job search process looks like, right? It's often lonely. You're often navigating that on your own. And so I think the ease of going to an AI tool, sure, it's right there at your fingertips always. And I think it's a great place to go to help you ideate, to help maybe find some answers. But I don't know that I'd always just leave it there. I think connecting to a career coach at your alma mater, through an alumni career services operation, could still be a really smart play, because now you're getting the wisdom and the context that person is seeing. And you're also finding those networking programs or those connections-based programs that so many of us operate in alumni career services to sort of help people navigate around processes that, AI tools are being used to scan or evaluate candidates. Well, how do you help our alums contact fellow alums at those organizations to build a relationship, to sort of maybe skip past or get some more attention from the hiring manager on your application? So I do think it has a really helpful place to play, and it's just being thoughtful about how is it augmenting versus what are the maybe specific tasks where it does make sense to have it sort of help us replace an effort or offload a little bit more of that workload. And something I also want to go back to, Ryan, that you opened with, just about the disruption in the job market. I think that things like the first destination survey are always going to be important for an institution's reputation. But I do think as the early career talent market does get disrupted by AI, that there are some roles that might be more replaceable. I think that it only sharpens the need for expanded alumni career services to help our recent grads navigate an increasingly tumultuous job market.
One of the things that I've been stewing on in my head is, you mentioned it, right, which is the places where AI can play a really helpful role, right? The resume review, right? We feel pretty confident that AI can deliver the right feedback to a young alum or a student on how to do that better. And it's really those areas where relationships are key, right? Where there's still going to be a role for career services administrators who are working to help do things like provide experiential learning opportunities or help sort through how to go about optimizing or achieving your search that will lead to resume caliber work experiences. And I often, Pat, work with colleges and universities who make this kind of sweeping declaration as a way to differentiate themselves in the market, where they say, you know what, we are going to provide internships for all, right? Or experiential learning for all. And I wonder whether or not, in order to do that effectively, right, that the team specifically deployed on campus to focus on finding and cultivating opportunities, right, will be the core function of career services teams. So, I mean, lots of schools want to embrace the provision of experiential learning and internships for all students. It's a big promise. What do you think the role of alumni advancement offices are in helping to sort of achieve this big goal?
Yeah, I think we can be a great source of those opportunities. I don't think we could ever be the sole source, right? If that's an institutional goal, it's probably going to require a lift that goes beyond just an alumni engagement or advancement shop and looking at other sources. But I do think that finding alumni connections that can help surface those opportunities, whether it's as formal as an internship or something somewhat less formal that still falls under that definition of experiential education. What a great ask to put out to prospects, to volunteers, and messaging at large to your community. And I think the key there too is to remember and help our alumni recognize this, that they don't have to be the decision maker, right? Maybe they're not the hiring manager for internships or the creator of these experiences, but if they think their organization could be the kind of place to create those opportunities, great. Maybe they can be someone that can influence that from the inside. So I think that's another thing to remember, that maybe they feel like, well, I don't know if I could be the one to check that box or to make this opportunity happen. That's okay. Maybe they can be the ones to open the doors, make the right key introduction to create a new bridge, a new opportunity between a college and university and their connection. I also think, too, for advancement folks to remember that this effort does need to be student-centered, right? Like, let's just take an extreme example. Let's say your institution produces lots of artists, but your most influential alum is from finance. I don't know if they're going to be as helpful on this front, right? If we want to be thoughtful about creating the kinds of opportunities that serve the academic goals and the professional goals of the institution. Just thinking like, okay, who are the right alums that we can reach out to that maybe are the key decision makers to create these kinds of opportunities? But even if not, maybe they can just open the door and make those introductions to help create and facilitate these kinds of opportunities for our students.
Yeah, I mean, there seems like really strong connectivity to the notion of helping to scale volunteerism, right? By providing and helping to enable alumni to open doors, right? Project-based opportunities. Sometimes I wonder whether the use of the word internship is actually a word that we may want to rethink in this modern era, right? Where it's much more of a commitment for everybody involved. And what we really need are resume caliber projects, And I think there's so many interesting things changing at the moment. But one thing that is a particular part of your work, I'd imagine, right, as part of advancement at Temple, is helping to kind of support alumni career services and alumni interactions with and through your college and unit partners on campus. Talk a little bit about some of the dialogue that you're having internally at Temple and how advancement is playing a role in supporting their efforts day to day.
So I sit on a central team at Temple University, and there are lots of different units around the university that are doing this kind of work, as you alluded to. And what we're trying to do is be a tide that lifts those boats. So we don't want to necessarily try to direct or control too much from the central perspective. We want to appreciate the intricacies of our specific college partners, unit partners, whoever's sort of doing a program. But what we're trying to think about is how can we create and bring to these partners a suite of central resources and tools. So we've created a mentorship toolkit that we can bring to partners if they're trying to grow a mentorship program, or we have a menu of different student to alumni connection programs. So if they're thinking like, hey, I want to try to connect our students with alums who are doing interesting things, whether it's for something as formal as an internship or, like you were saying, something more like a project. Okay, here's a menu of opportunities that we can help you to create and to facilitate. Or here's central data that we can help, right? If you're looking for specific types of alumni with a specific professional background or a mix of majors, how can we leverage central data systems to help you find the right people for these opportunities? So it's really about enabling our partners to either grow something that they already have, right? Maybe they have some smaller student to alumni connections program that they're looking to scale, or maybe they aspire to create one, right? Maybe it's something that's being driven by the staff, driven by goals of the dean of that college or leadership in that specific unit. And so how can we help them get it off the ground and make sure they're not doing it alone or feel like they have to do it by themselves, but they've got these tools we're leveraging, or we're sort of creating a coalition of thought partnership at Temple to help support one another. So again, we can kind of be that tide that lifts all of the boats across the university, and we can collect some data and make sure that that data collection is centralized. From a robust mindset, if it's not in the database, was the alum really engaged, right? So just helping to find all of these programs wherever they live and figure out how can we also collect data and celebrate the good work that's happening across the university.
That's fantastic. And so do you centrally manage or deploy your own programs, or would you say the majority of the work is facilitating the growth of partner programs?
Yeah, I think majority is facilitating the growth of the partner programs, especially when we think about student to alumni connection programs, right? Whether that's as formal as a mentorship program or as informal as coffee chats or career panels. We want to sort of identify who's already doing this, who wants to do more of this, and then how can we scale at those opportunities or help them get off the ground. Because with a smaller staff, you can only do so much, right? You can only sort of facilitate so many connections. So that was a strategic decision that we made to say, well, okay, how do we centrally support lots of engagement elsewhere? Because if we can make everybody's program 10 to 15% bigger, I think that's going to create more impact than a few centrally managed programs that would hit a ceiling a little bit more quickly.
Yeah, that sounds like a great approach, and to help provide service continuity and enhanced engagement. All right, Pat, I could nerd out on this topic with you all day, but try to keep things a little shorter here on Alumless Takes. Always our last question, though. Tell me about a book or an article or a podcast, movie, something that you might recommend to listeners.
Yeah, so I want to take us back to the AI conversation. There's a fiction series called Murderbot by Martha Wells, and it's also now a show on Apple TV. But of course, the books are fantastic, and start with the books. And it's a great discussion about the future of AI in the world and who gets to say they're a person and who can claim humanity. So, as we're adapting to this emerging technology, what a wonderful way to imagine its future than diving into some excellently written fiction work about what our future might look like someday.
Awesome. All right, we'll have to leave it there. Pat Fligge, thank you so much for joining me on Alumless Takes. Pat's the Director of Alumni Career Engagement at Temple University. All right, Pat, thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.